Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So it is the start of Women's History Month, and I want to talk a little bit about what I'm planning to read this month for learning and also just for enjoyment. The goal for my reading this month is to read women-authored books and books that talk about women's stories. These are books about topics that I'm very interested in learning about and reading more about. For me, during Women's History Month, I really like to read some books that are educational and that will help me learn and grow, and also fiction books that explore different aspects of womanhood. So let's get into the TBR. Okay, let's start off with nonfiction. I don't have this book yet, but it's coming in the mail, and it is The Women's House of Detention, A Queer History of a Forgotten Prison by Hugh Ryan. So this book talks about the Women's House of Detention and the era of women's imprisonment. The prison was in Greenwich Village, and it stood from 1929 to 1974. The blurb says it's the story of one building and much more, the people it caged, the neighborhood it changed, and the resistance it inspired. So this is a topic that I'm really excited to read more about and learn about, and that is the first book on my TBR. Continuing on with nonfiction, I have Flesh and Blood, Reflections on Infertility, Family, and Creating a Bountiful Life, a memoir by N. West Moss. So I've read quite a few books about different aspects of women's health. However, I've read a lot more books about abortion and motherhood than I have about infertility specifically, and this is an area of women's health that I'm interested in learning more about. So I figured I would pick this one up. It's been on my shelf for way too long, and I think this is the right time to give it a read. Okay, so getting into the history aspect of Women's History Month, I have Fly Girls, How 5 Daring Women Defied All Odds and Made Aviation History by Keith O'Brien. So while this book is written by a man, I think that it is a really relevant topic to my life in particular. My husband is in the aviation field, and we talk often about the lack of representation of women in aviation in general. And I also live in Kansas, and Wichita is like the mecca of aviation history. So it feels like a very relevant topic to learn more about, and it's an aspect of women's history that I think will be really useful and interesting to learn about. I also think that I'm going to audiobook this because it is a bit long, so I think that that will help me sort of get through it at a quicker pace. But yeah, that's this one. Okay, next up we have On Our Best Behavior, The 7 Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good by Elise Loehnen. So part of the blurb says, in On Our Best Behavior, Loehnen reveals how we've been culturally programmed to obey the rules represented by these sins and how doing so qualifies us as good. This probing analysis of contemporary culture and thoroughly researched history explains how women have internalized the patriarchy and how they unwittingly reinforce it. So this is a book that is basically talking about the ways in which these biblical sins have shaped our understanding of what it means to be good in the world, specifically as it relates to being a woman and feminine instincts and urges. And the topic of how the Bible and Christianity has shaped our society and society's views on women is a topic that I am really connected to and think is really important to learn about. So this is a relatively new book that I just heard about, and I think that it's going to be a really great addition to that conversation. So moving into fiction, the next book on my TBR is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. So this is the story of a young black girl who witnesses the shooting of her brother, and the crime was never solved. And the book essentially follows Ebby, the main character, who is trying to run away from this past, and she moves away, and in an effort to process her trauma, she discovers some of the generational traumas that have been passed down through her family. So this book has been called a multi-generational epic that examines how the past informs our present. It just sounds like a really gripping story and a really important one, so I'm going to give this one a read. I'm also buddy reading it with my mom, so that will be super fun to chat about and to discuss these themes together. So that is Good Dirt. Okay, moving on, I have a short story collection, and this is a translated book, and that's A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez. Mariana Enriquez is one of my favorite authors. She has some incredible short story collections that I own and love, and this book has similar horror themes. The blurb says, in 12 spellbinding news stories, Enriquez writes about ordinary people, especially women, whose lives turn inside out when they encounter terror, the surreal, or the supernatural. So this book is on my 2025 TBR, and I think I want to slot it in for March because it goes perfectly with the theme of this TBR, and I just think that it's a really great book to read for Women's History Month. So that is A Sunny Place for Shady People. And the final book on this TBR is a book that I've had for a while. I've been recommended a million times, it feels like, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This book follows the 39 women who are imprisoned underground and have no idea how they got there and don't remember any men in their lives. I've heard that this is just a really great piece of speculative fiction and a really important story to read. So yeah, I'm really hoping to get around to this month. All right, so those are all the books that I plan to read for March 2025 for Women's History Month. Let me know what you're excited to read for Women's History Month. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.